So, good morning, children. So, after the third chapter, the first phase of Indian national movement, where we have seen about, the moderate congressmen, how Congress party has emerged, and what are the other, so how the moderates have developed, the national movement in Indian National Congress. So, all such things we have learned in the previous chapter. Now, in the second phase of the national movement, let us see what we are going to learn. So this second phase of Indian national movement is also it's a second phase where a different set of congressmen will lead the national movement. So as I told you in the previous chapter that there is no such phases actually, but historians to make us to understand the national movement, they have categorized the movement led by Indian National Congress and its leaders into first phase and second phase like this. So the nature of congressmen and their way of leading the national movement has created or is responsible for this chapter called second phase of Indian national movement. So let us go into the chapter now. So to understand this, to begin this chapter, let us start with Lord Curzon. So Lord Curzon was the Viceroy. So Viceroy is the position created by the British Parliament to look after the Indian affairs. He was the highest authority who looks after the Indian affairs. So his period, his tenure means his time period as Viceroy of India, that is between 1899 to 1905, was marked with controversies. That means the decision taken by this man, Lord Curzon, involved many controversies and many kind of problems to Indians. So hence his tenure was confirmed as or marked as with controversies. One of his administrative measures that resulted in the strong resentment was the partition of Bengal in 1905. So if at all we have to say one of the controversial decisions taken by Lord Curzon, you can see Lord Curzon in the picture, and one of the very important administrative measure, that means just in the name of ease of administration, to make administration easily, he took a very big administrative step with reference to Indian history. So what was it? It is partition of Bengal. So who did it? Lord Curzon. And this was concealed as an attack on Indian nationalism. As I told you that in the previous chapter, there were conditions slowly prevailing that created gap between British and the Indian National Congress. So to make Indians more suffering, you take Lord Curzon. Okay, what he did? He divided the Bengal, or partition of Bengal was, partition of Bengal happened during his viceroyship. So let us see what is this partition of Bengal and other things. So scheme of partition. So how he did it? So Bengal Presidency was thickly populated province in British India. So the Britishers were trying to know, so we were just trying to know that what are the conditions that led to partition of Bengal. So this is as per British. So presidency, that means Bengal was a presidency those days. Like they had four presidencies, Bengal, and provincial things. So Bengal presidency. So this Bengal presidency was very thickly populated. That means there was more number of people living in this Bengal, and it comprised Bengal, Bihar, Odisha, Chota Nagpur, and some other remote areas. So Bengal presidency is not just Bengal. It also has Bihar, it also has Orissa, and also it has Chota Nagpur and some other areas. Now you can imagine altogether this is one presidency, and the population of this is very high. So the area was 4,89,500 square kilometers. Such a huge area was Bengal presidency, and a population of 80 million population. Understood? So we were just trying to understand what were the reasons why they have gone for partition of Bengal. One is huge presidency with these kind of Bihar, Odisha and Chota Nagpur, and the area is also very vast. Population is very thick. That means 80 million people used to live in all these four areas. And on July 20, 1905, Lord Curzon announced the division of province of Bengal into following two provinces. So considering all these reasons, Lord Curzon divided, he announced on July 20th, 1905, what he announced that he is proposing for the Bengal partition. So how many parts that Bengal was divided? So Bengal included the western districts of Bengal proper, that means whatever there in, I mean the Bengal. So he divided Bengal into two parts. One Bengal was with the western districts of Bengal. So if you take this is Bengal, and all the western districts of Bengal were, sorry, all the western districts of Bengal were along with Bihar and Odisha with a population of 54 million, and Calcutta was capital. So if you take this is all Bengal, if you take this is all Bengal, the western portion of Bengal, okay, so this western portion of Bengal along with Odisha and Bihar. So these three places together were divided into one part, and the population was almost 54 million, and Calcutta was its capital. So they made Calcutta as capital of the West Bengal, and the other part is called East Bengal and Assam. So it comprised of eastern districts of Bengal and Assam with a population of 31 million. Now this I said this is Western Bengal, right? West Bengal with with Bihar and with Odisha. Now East Bengal. So the other part of Bengal that got divided was Eastern Bengal. That is the eastern districts of Bengal as well as Assam. So this was included. I mean, this was separated as another part. So what was the population in this place? 31 million. So the 80 million population, on the basis of the reasons called administrative reasons and more area and other things, they have divided it into two parts. And so the province of Eastern Bengal was dominated by Bengali Muslims, and the province of the West Bengal or the Bengal was dominated by non-Bengali population. So East Bengal was dominated by Muslims and West Bengal was dominated by non-Bengalis. That means mostly Hindus. So the Hindu Bengali population became a minority in both the provinces. The Hindu Bengali population became a minority. For example, if you take West Bengal here, so when West Bengal was divided, the Hindus were minority here. Non-Bengalis were more. Hindus were minority here. If you take East Bengal, here the Muslims were more and the Hindu Bengalis were less. So in both provinces, which population became less? The Hindu Bengali population became a minority. So the scheme of partition of Bengal was implemented on October 16th. So it was announced on July 20th, and by October it was implemented. So there is a difference of date. Announcement was on July and partition happened on October. So, so what are the causes that these people have told for partition of Bengal? So the main motive, okay. So what do you mean by main motive? Is the main reason was, so this was according to British rulers. The main reason for partition of Bengal, according to the British rulers, was administrative necessity. This is a convenient term that these people have used. As this is a huge province, to carry on the governance of this presidency, it is becoming difficult. They wanted to, they wanted the province of Bengal to be divided. So to make efficient administration by a single provincial government, they want the partition of Bengal. So one Bengal was having capital city at Calcutta and another Bengal was having its capital city at Dhaka. So these two parts they wanted to divide. I mean the Bengal they wanted to get it divided based on administrative reasons. So However, the officials who worked out the plan had concealed motives. That means the British have hidden some reasons for the partition of Bengal. They openly said that it is for administrative reasons, but there are some hidden reasons why they went for Bengal division. So let us see what are they. It was Bengal was the nerve center of Indian nation at that time. So many national leaders were taking part from Bengal, and Bengal became a very hot spot for nationalism. So to stop the rising tide of nationalism, they wanted to divide Bengal so that the leaders get separated and the movement in Bengal, which is even creating a pan-India movement, will become weak. So to as Bengal was nerve center of Indian nationalism, to stop nationalism in from Bengal getting stronger, they went for this was a hidden reason why they went for partition. And the political purpose behind this partition was Risley, the Home Secretary to government, said Bengal United is a power. So the Risley, who was a Home Secretary to the government of British India, he said in his words that there are some political reasons. Okay, the political reasons for dividing Bengal was Bengal, if it is united, if both eastern and western provinces are united, it is very powerful. Bengal divided will pull in several different ways. So if they divide Bengal, then it would be very much beneficial to British politically. So and one of our main objects is to split up, thereby to weaken a solid body of opponents to our rule. So as I told you, same reason. This Bengal has seen many great national leaders who are making nationalism very strong there. So in the words of Risley, it clearly resembles that he wanted or the British wanted to split up Bengal so that the national movement of the congressmen or the Bengalis, which was creating a very good impact, would become very weak. So that's the first reason. And the partition of the state was intended to curb the Bengali influence by not only placing Bengalis under two administrations, but by reducing them to a minority in Bengal itself. So when these both Bengali parts are together, the Bengalis were very strong because they were united now in the name of Bengal. But by dividing Bengal, they split up the population of Bengalis into two places. So like when suppose you take for example, if there are 10 people, if there are 100 people in a place and they're very powerful, if you divide them into two rooms, so one in 50, one room having 50, another room having 50, then what happens in that particular room? This 50 will become minority, in another room, the 50 will become minority. That means they'll become weak. So the same the British played. They wanted the Bengalis to be minorities in their own place so that they may not unite again. And the partition was meant for foster division on the basis of religion. So another important factor was by this time British were trying to divide India on the basis of Hindu Muslim things. So based on religion, they wanted to divide and rule. Hence, Bengal was like a very good chance for them. East Bengal would be dominated by Muslims, and West Bengal would have a Hindu majority. So now, between Hindus and Muslims, they can create some problems, and this would always give a good opportunity for British to exploit more and more and to reduce the nationalism. So this was the hidden reason of division of Bengal. So when Bengal scheme of partition was introduced, the Indian nationalists they saw the design behind the partition and condemned it. That means very soon the Indian nationalists they have understood what were the hidden reasons that were that led to the design of this partition was very well known to Indian nationalists. So immediately they condemned such kind of reasons, and they even condemned the partition of Bengal. They saw it was a deliberate attempt to divide Bengalis on religious and territorial grounds. So Indian nationalists observed that the British have wantedly divided the strong Bengalis because Bengalis were religiously together, the Hindus and Muslims, they were living together, and the territory was also a very big one. So these two factors were looking for Britishers as a strong factors for Bengal to remain very strong. So to disrupt and weaken nationalism in Bengal, they have divided. So this idea was fixed among the Indian nationalists. They felt that administrative efficiency could have been better secured by separating Hindi-speaking Bihar and Odia-speaking Odisha from the Bengali-speaking part of province. So the Britishers had one idea. They wanted to divide on the grounds of religion and other things in a very hidden manner. But Indian nationalists, they felt that, okay, if at all the British wanted to divide it for administrative efficiency, then they felt they could have divided Bengal based on the language that people speak. So in Bengal presidency, Bihari people speak Hindi and Odisha people speak Odia. So if at all they wanted to create administrative efficiency, they could have separated Bihar and they could have separated Odisha from Bengal presidency because based on the language they speak, they may try to remain together and they may develop properly. So, and Bengali speaking province as one, they could have kept. But what they did, they have just divided on the basis of territory and religion. So, which was a very bold step to prohibit or to restrict the national movement in Bengal. But the manner in which the announcement of partition was made without any regard for public opinion, that means when taking such a big decision, the British government, they have never taken the public opinion. So Indian nationalists observed this also a wrong step. That means they felt that without considering whether people of Bengal would like to divide or not, how can they divide? So this hurted the sentiments of sensitive Bengalis. So this was the view and ideology of Indian nationalists on the Bengal partition. So what happened when such announcement was done? There was an anti-partition movement. So naturally, the Indian national leaders from Bengal, they would not like to support this partition. So they led an anti-partition movement that we will see now. People started a strong movement against the partition known as anti-partition movement. So the partition of Bengal led to a mighty upsurge which brought people and political leaders together. That means a mighty upsurge means like it's a kind of sentiment that people got. So here mighty upsurge means in terms of quantity. So many people, almost all the Bengalis, it made people to come together, brought people and leaders also to come together. So this was a very important step or development that happened when announcement of Bengal partition was done. So it made people of Bengal and the leaders to come together. And Indian National Congress and the Nationalists of Bengal opposed the partition. Who opposed this partition? The Indian National Congress was the only political party representing Indians, so they outrightly rejected, and the nationalists of Bengal, especially, so that means people who are national leaders from Bengal, they also opposed this partition in a very serious manner. So within Bengal, different sections of population like zamindars, merchants, lawyers, students, and women, they rose up in opposition to the partition of their province. So, in anti-partition movement, who participated now? Leaders, Indian National Congress, the people like jamindars, merchants, lawyers, students, and women. So these all people they came together for anti-partition movement. And what did they do? They organized protest meetings. So, under the leadership of Surendranath Banerjee, Krishna Kumar Mitra, P.C. Ray, Bipin Chandra Pal, Anand Mohan Bose, and many such Bengalis people organized protest meetings. What do you mean by protest meetings? That means they have expressed their dissatisfaction and resentment against Britishers under the leaders like Surendranath Banerjee, Bipin Chandra Pal, and other people. The early nationalists and assertive nationalists cooperated with one another. So we know from the last chapter that Congress party was having two groups within it. One groups were called early nationalist group and the other group was called assertive nationalist group. So these assertive nationalists and early nationalists, they were not having unity and they got split also. They made Congress party also to got it split by this time. So if you want an example for early nationalists, Surendranath Banerjee. If you want an example for assertive nationalists, Bipin Chandra Pal. So here, under these leaders, people organized protest meetings throughout the Bengal. So both early nationalists and the assertive nationalists, during the course of the movement, they came together. So with reference to Bengal partition or anti-partition movement, both these assertives and early nationalists who were divided based on various issues within Congress, they got unified. On this issue, they have come together. The leaders condemned partition through newspapers like Bengali, Hitabdi, and Sanjeevani. So newspapers also played a very important role in anti-partition movement. What are those newspapers? Bengali, Hitabdi, and Sanjeevani. So through these newspapers, the national leaders wrote many news articles against the partition. The anti-partition movement was initiated on August 7th. You all know that it was announced on July, right? So in July, the announcements were made, and by August, what happened? Anti-partition movement started. So on that August 7th, 1905, the protest of Bengalis against this partition was in a very peculiar manner. So what did they do to protest? That we will see now. A massive demonstration against partition was organized in the town hall in Kolkata. So in the town hall of Kolkata, many Bengalis and leaders gathered together and they have organized a demonstration. That means they wanted to rose against the partition. From this meeting, the delegates dispersed to spread the movement to the rest of province. So all important leaders gathered in on August 7th. They gathered in this town hall of Kolkata, took a decision that they wanted to take this movement to common people. So the leaders dispersed to various places of the Bengal province for spreading the movement. That was an important decision that happened in on August 7th, 1905, which was considered like a beginning of anti-partition movement. How did people reacted to this partition proposal? That we will see. Partition came into effect on October 16th. Announced on July, anti-partition movement started in August, and by October, this movement, this partition came into effect. The leaders of the protest movement declared it a day of national mourning throughout the Bengal. So on October 16th, all the leaders, along with people, they observed as a national mourning. So what do you mean by national mourning here? So the people as well as leaders observed national mourning. That means throughout the country, they expressed their sorrow. Expressing the sorrowness is called mourning. And throughout Bengal, this kind of expressing their sorrowness for division happened. And this day was observed as a day of fasting. So people went on fasting by not taking food and water. They showed their sorrowness and they showed their angriness on the Britishers. And there was also a hartal in Kolkata. What do you mean by hartal? Hartal means it is a kind of protest where people will close their shops, their business places, and their every activity, and they remain in home and express their sorrow. So this, basically closing of shops and stopping themselves from day-to-day activities is called hartal. So this was observed in Kolkata, like you can call like modern day Bandh. Voluntarily, people closed all their shops, they shut down all the business activities, and they expressed their sorrowness. And the people walked barefooted. That means they wanted to show their protest by barefoot walking, and they bathed in Ganga in the early morning hours. So they went to Ganga river, they dipped themselves, and they expressed their protest. The streets of Kolkata were full of the cries of Bande Mataram, which became the theme song of national movement. So in Bengali we don't have V, so they call Ba. So hence they call it as Bande Mataram. So which became the theme song of national movement. People walked onto the streets and they started giving the slogans Bande Mataram. And Rabindranath Tagore composed the patriotic song Amar Sona Bangla, My Golden Bengal, for the occasion, which was sung by huge crowds parading the streets. Rabindranath Tagore, who was a great poet and a great scholar in Bengal, he wrote Sonar Bangla, that is My Golden Bengal. So he wrote a nice patriotic song, and people used to sing this patriotic song in a all the huge crowds. They started singing this patriotic song, and they went on like a parade in the street means they took a big walk protesting against the partition by singing these songs. And the ceremony of Raksha Bandhan was celebrated in a new way. So generally Raksha Bandhan will be celebrated between brothers and sisters. So here the Hindus and Muslims tied Rakis on one another's wrist as a symbol of unbreakable unity of the Bengalis, the two halves of Bengal. So the Hindus and Muslims, they came onto the roads, they tied their yellow threads to their hands, symbolizing their unity, and they celebrated Raksha Bandhan in a very different manner. So this is how people reacted to this is how people led anti-partition movement in Bengal. So this kind of protest was done by people in the morning, and in the afternoon there was a great demonstration when the veteran leader Anand Mohan Bose laid the foundation of a federation hall to mark the indestructible unity of Bengal. So he, what Anand Mohan Bose did was he laid the foundation of Federation Hall. What do you mean by Federation Hall? Federation means both East Bengal and West Bengal having a common conference hall. That will symbolize to British that they were still like together. Federation Hall means where both Bengalis, East and West Bengalis, can conduct meetings. That will symbolize the unity of Bengalis. So who did this? Anand Mohan Bose did this. And all gathered there took the vow of follow Swadeshi. So all Bengalis from east and west side and the leaders, they came to this federation hall and they took a vow, that means promise, saying that from now onwards let us, I mean Swadeshi movement was like, you can call like we have to follow Swadeshi, that means we have to uh, be ourselves from now onwards. So this kind of sentiment was delivered to people through this federation hall started by Anand Mohan Bose. And what was the impact of anti-partition movement? So they did partition. See, proposed in July, protest started in August, and partition finished by October. So on this October 6th, what happened? This kind of all mourning, taking bath in Ganges, walking barefooted, and all these things were done. And what was the impact of anti-partition movement? Did anything happen because of this movement? Did it influence the British? That we will see now. Lord Curzon had fired a very big gun, but the recoil was tremendous. So even though Lord Curzon thought the Bengal partition would create a very division among Indians, but the reconciliation, that means instead of dividing Hindus and Muslims, it created a very big unity among these people. So that was very tremendous response that British never expected. They thought people would divide and they will keep quiet, but it in fact strengthened Hindus and Muslims more, and a wave of indigenation swept across the whole province and had the following impact. What do you mean by wave of indigenation? That means using of our own goods and thinking about India, and this kind of feeling, in fact, it became more. Instead of it becoming less, it became more. So Lord Curzon also didn't expect this. Let us see what is the impact exactly. Partition of Bengal, along with the anti-partition movement, accelerated the national movement. What it like? It accelerated. That means it has speeded up the nationalistic movement. Instead of making it slower, it even made it very fast, and it made it very effective. And the main thing that happened was the movement led even masses to involve in the national movement. So till in the previous class we studied that in the previous chapter we studied the early nationalists failed in bringing masses, right? Now this general masses started coming into nationalism. This was a very big impact on Indian national movement, and people rose to resist, suffer, and sacrifice. The way the partition happened, people were moved, they were sentimentally moved, and they resisted British act. They were ready to suffer and sacrifice to work against British. This kind of sentiment was a huge impact of anti-partition movement. One is nationalist movement became strong. General masses also entered into national movement. The idea of Swadeshi and boycott, born of the popular feelings in 1905, use of Swadeshi goods, boycott of foreign goods. These kind of things became popular during this 1905 anti-partition movement. It was realized that Swadeshi and boycott were complementary and one would not succeed without the other. So if Indians wanted to use their own goods, then they should boycott all the foreign goods. So if they boycott the foreign goods, then our Indian goods can be they can be used more. This kind of they're both complementary in nature. So if you don't boycott, you will not get importance for Swadeshi goods. If you don't use Swadeshi goods, you can't buy. I mean, if you only use Swadeshi goods, only then you can boycott the foreign goods. So the another major impact that resulted was Swadeshi and boycott. These two concepts became very popular during this anti-partition movement. They were used as weapons for political agitation and training in self-sufficiency for the attainment of Swaraj. So remember that among the impacts of anti-partition movement, Swadeshi and boycott were the two concepts or were the two things which people strongly adapted. So British goods were burnt at public places. So as they come to decision that they want to boycott foreign goods, they took all the British goods and they started burning at public places, and shops selling them were picketed. That means anybody who sells British goods, they were looted and they were taken out and they were burnt. And the spirit of Swadeshi spread to almost every walk of life, industries, education, culture, literature, etc. During this time only, many national leaders they started Indianized educations, colleges, schools, and many people started Indian industries. Many rich Indians they started some industries. So this kind of Swadeshi feeling became more and more because of this anti-partition movement. So the people lost their faith in their fair play and justice of British. So once for all, the people who were like very much humble, very much obedient to British, they lost faith in the justice of British. And Lord Curzon refused to concede to the demands of annulling the partition. So Lord Curzon was the viceroy responsible for this. He refused to concede the demands of annulling the partition. So from various sides, from Congress, from people, from Bengali people, and many other areas, when they asked that partition should be considered as invalid, when they demanded Lord Curzon to not bring this partition into effect, he said that he refused to make it invalid. He said partition of Bengal is a settled fact. That means the decision cannot be changed, and what is settled cannot be unsettled. So that means it is already taken and it is done, and there is no way to take it back. That was a reply from Lord Curzon, and it made people to lost faith on British in various parts of India also. And the anti-partition agitation backfired the plans of Lord Curzon. So Lord Curzon did this to just divide Hindus and Muslims, and also to exploit Bengal very easily. But the assumptions that Lord Curzon had, or the profits that they were expecting through this partition, didn't came true. It gave added strength to national movement. As I told you, British wanted to Bengal to emerge as a nerve center of nationalism that they wanted to stop. But instead, it created a very strong national movement in Bengal itself. The methods adopted by early nationalists lost their appeal and gave an opportunity to assertive nationalists to lead the national movement. So I told you that the both both the assertives and both the early nationalists, they divided on various issues. But based on this Bengal division, they came together. And when they were working for the anti-partition movement, the early nationalists and their methods of petitions and all, they lost importance, because even though they gave petitions and all, you know what Lord Curzon said, it is a settled argument, he said. So slowly the early nationalists and their strategies have become very dull, and people started losing faith on their methods. And the other group of congressmen called assertive nationalists, that means who believe that they don't want to be very humble and obedient to British, and they wanted to go for even violence if needed. So this kind of assertive nationalists, they gained popularity in Congress and among also people. This was another major impact of anti-partition movement. That is, early nationalists lost their glory because of the methods they adopted. They could not stop partition, but whereas assertive nationalists, their methods have helped people to at least protest in a very huge manner. So they gained popularity among the people. The partition of Bengal was revoked in 1911. So in 1911, I think by 1905, partition completed, and after 5 years, in 1911, the partition of Bengal was revoked by Lord Hardinge. Okay, so by this time, by 1911, there was another viceroy by name Lord Hardinge, and he revoked the partition of Bengal. That means he uh, took it back. So not based on the things which they did, but he took it in a different way. First, he revoked partition of Bengal. That means he cancelled that partition, and a new scheme of partition of Bengal was implemented on linguistic rather than on religious grounds. So I told you that the nationalists have also demanded that if you divide, suppose if at all you want to create an administrative easiness for governance, why don't you divide based on the language people speak? So that based on the language they speak, they may get a chance to help themselves. So like if Odia people, Bihari people, if they could rule themselves, it would be beneficial for them, but not on religious grounds. So this time, Lord Hardinge, he revoked the old partition and he implemented a new partition based on linguistic basis. So what is linguistic basis? I told you that based on people speaking the language, Bengali speaking people all in one province, Odia speaking people in all one province, and all Hindi speaking people in Bihari province. Like that they were divided now. So on the grounds of language like Hindi, Oriya and Assamese, were separated from Bengal to form separate administrative units. So Lord Hardinge divided this based on language now, and the administrative capital of British was shifted from Kolkata to Delhi. So earlier, the administrative capital for entire India was operated from Kolkata by British. Now, what they did? They made Delhi as capital city, and by 1911, the partition was done in a different way again.